Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff with Fluent American checking in. And today we're going to be looking at idioms, idiomatic expressions. These are the 16 most common idioms that you're going to find in English. This is based on corpus-based research. So basically, what they did was they scoured the internet and books and dialogues and transcripts to try to find out, which idioms are the most common in English, which ones are you most likely to see. And this is basically the list that they come up with, the 16 most common. And it's crazy because like these 16 expressions are by far the most common. Like the next group of idioms are just much less common. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of what all of these mean. We're going to be going through all 16. I'll try to give some specific examples of each of them. We'll talk about their pronunciation, of course. We are a pronunciation channel. And of course, if you have questions about any of them as we go through, be sure to let me know. I'll be taking a look at the chat box, so in case anything's not clear, I'll be happy to respond. Also, just a quick note, I have a son. You may hear him in the background. Sorry, that's how life goes. So yeah, most common idioms of all time, starting with this one here, behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. Key thing when you're saying this is you want to stress scenes. Scenes, behind the scenes. The behind is usually going to be reduced. It's going to be said typically pretty fast, so you don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. Behind the scenes. What does this mean? Well, so for instance, we can see here in the picture, you can see it looks like some like newsroom or like some sort of TV show, some sort of TV production. And then behind all that, closer to us, you can see the cameras, you can see the lights, things like that. So behind the scenes is used to kind of talk about, all the work or all the things that are being done outside of people's view. So the things that happen when you don't notice. So for instance, when you watch a TV show, all you see are the actors, on the camera. You don't see the director. You don't see the film crew. You don't see the makeup artists. All that work that you're not familiar with. Okay, and this can go, beyond TV productions and things like that. This can also extend to, say, like hard work, in school. When students take a test, a teacher doesn't know when their students are studying and things like that, right? They only know the results from the test scores. So that's kind of another thing that you'll see too with behind the scenes, is that it's also in reference to, all the hard work that you're putting in other situations when people aren't watching you and things like that. Again, behind the scenes. Next one, set the stage for. To set the stage for something. Stress stage. Set the stage. Make sure for stage you're raising that pitch. It's not sets the stage, it's set the stage. Set the stage for something. Prepare for something. So for instance, here you can see that we have a stage. A stage is a place where you perform. So you can see in the middle, you can see that stage where all the lights are pointing and things like that. And you can see all the people waiting. Okay, so to set the stage, notice that there's no actual performer yet. Everyone's ready for the performance, but the performance hasn't started yet. Okay, so that's kind of what set the stage is getting at. To set the stage for something means like to prepare for something or to get everything ready for something. Usually something dramatic. So for instance, if you like political news or like global news and things like that, like when one country decides to devalue its currency or something like that, they're going to say, oh, we're going to make our currency cheaper. That can set the stage for conflict with other countries because they're like, hey, now your products are going to be cheaper. They're going to compete with our products. That can be a problem, like from an economic point of view. Okay, so like to set the stage is like to prepare something. That's another idiom you want to be familiar with. Ooh, let me pull that up to make it a little bit easier to see. Okay, over the top. Over the top means to be like extremely dramatic, over the top. If something is over the top, that means like it's extremely extravagant, maybe to the point of being too much. So for instance here, like you can tell this woman is upset, but her demonstration of being upset is over the top. It's super dramatic. She's got her hand up here, she's got her other hand outstretched, she's got her head tilted back. It's just a little bit more dramatic than it probably needs to be. So it's going to be over the top. exaggerated too much. You could say her emotions were over the top, or her display of emotion was over the top. Next one, out of your mind. Out of your mind. This often suggests that if you tell us to someone like, hey, you're out of your mind, or that idea, like you've got to be out of your mind if you think that. It kind of means like you're crazy, or something's not going to work. So for instance, imagine that this person here is your boss, and you tell him that, hey, I want to like take like a 3-month vacation starting tomorrow. You know, your boss could tell you, oh, you're out of your mind, you're crazy, like that's not going to work. Out of your mind. Out of your mind. In terms of pronunciation, a couple quick things here. Out of, you notice that linking with the fast D sounds, like out of your. Also notice again for your often gets reduced to like your. So say your, out of your. Lastly, notice for the of, it has that V sound, right? Of. Out of your mind. Out of your mind. The stress is on mind. So you want to make sure that mind is the strongest word that you hear. You're out of your mind. Out of your mind. Our next one. Think twice. Think twice. The full phrase would be like, think twice about something. Think twice about. Think twice means to reconsider or to think again. So notice that for this person in the picture, she has one idea, but there's lots of other ideas around her too. Maybe that one idea at the moment seems like a good idea, but then you think twice about it and you're like, oh, maybe that's not a good idea. Okay. If someone tells you to think twice, like think twice about doing that. Like maybe a mom will tell her kid, like, think twice before you do that at school, or do something at school, or eat the last cookie, or things like that. Think twice about it. That means like to reconsider. Usually it's used a lot of times as a warning to not do something. So if someone tells you to think twice about it, that means they're trying to tell you, don't think about it, do something else. Round the clock. Round the clock. You can see here in the picture we have 24. 24 in reference to hours, 24 hours in the day. So for instance, if a restaurant is open round the clock, that means that it's open 24 hours. That means it doesn't close. Okay, so something is open 24 hours. If something's open around the clock, that means it never closes or it never stops. So for instance, maybe you have a long shift at work, you know, like a lot of hospital workers these days have been working very long. So you could say like they feel like they're on the clock, or like they're working round the clock. They're working round the clock. They never get a chance to breathe. They never get a chance to stop. Round the clock. Behind closed doors. This is in reference to, we can see our guy. Whoops, sorry, press the wrong button. So we can see our guy holding his ear up against the door trying to listen in, right? It's like behind closed doors means that you're trying, there's a discussion or there's a meeting, some sort of talk going on behind closed doors. That means that it's in private. It's like something that people are talking about in secret, with other people not being able to hear. You know, so for instance, maybe behind this door or behind this wall, they're having a discussion about him, maybe in his job. Okay, so for instance, if this guy's at work, he does something wrong, his boss isn't sure what he's going to do about it yet. It's like maybe his boss will meet with a supervisor and they'll discuss, like behind closed doors, what they think will happen. Okay, so like behind closed doors, to do something in private. Hit the road. Hit the road. So we can see here there's some sort of looks like an SUV driving off towards the sun. It's a pretty dramatic picture, right? The picture is kind of over the top, if you remember that one. It's a little bit dramatic. Hit the road means like to start a journey. A lot of times it can literally mean like to start like a car ride, or like to start a trip somewhere. Like if your friend says, oh, I need to hit the road, that means like I need to start driving home or something like that. Start departing, leaving. Okay, so to hit the road means like to leave or to start, to depart, to start something new. So you need to hit the road. Notice a word here that, or a sound here that can be a little tricky for a lot of students is that hit sound with that short I. Hit. Keep in mind, it's not heat. It's not heat. It's a short I. It's like hit. hit. You need to make sure that the back of your tongue is down, that tip of your tongue is down, your tongue's slightly raised. The sides of your tongue, you should feel your top teeth for that sound. Hit, hit. If you're saying heat, that's a different word, so watch out for your long I sounds. Okay. Also, just a quick reminder, speaking about pronunciation and things like that, we are on Patreon. So Patreon is a place where if you contribute a certain amount of dollars per month, you receive certain benefits. So for instance, probably the best one is like right now, like the $5, like the Telegram group. Okay, our Telegram group, basically on Telegram, I have a group of students. I send them a pronunciation prompt every day. Then on the app, they can record their own voices and practice the words I send, and I can provide them feedback. Okay, so if you're trying to get some daily pronunciation practice and trying to get some daily feedback, it's $5 for the entire month. So $5 gets you access to the group for the entire month. Compare that to like a pronunciation class, which can be like $30, $40 for an hour. You know, you're getting $5 for a whole month worth of challenges and prompts and practice. So that's a great deal. For $10 a month, you can also join a Native U session. A Native U session is a workshop for pronunciation. We actually have a couple of examples on our YouTube channel. If you look for Native U, you can see some of our intonation workshops that we've done. We're also holding another workshop on the ah sound and the sounds, like lock versus luck. That's going to be on, obviously not today, but next week on Halloween, on the 31st. So if you're interested in joining that, a half hour of just practicing ah sounds and sounds like lock, luck, shot, shut, making sure to hear the differences between those and how to pronounce them. That is definitely something that I think would be interesting. So for $10 a month, you would get free access to the group for Telegram and also a free workshop once a month. So those are just some things to consider. Moving back on to idioms. Next one, play ball. Play ball means like to agree or like to understand the rules of how something works and to go through with it. So a lot of times it can be used for sports. I mean, that's where it's coming from, to play ball. However, it can also be used for agreements or things like that. So for instance, you can see these guys shaking hands. So maybe like they're getting like a business deal done. Okay. So that means that they both agree to kind of play ball with each other. Like one person wants one thing, the other person wants another thing, but they're going to work together to try to achieve what they both want. Okay. So they're willing to play ball. They're willing to work with each other to get something done, to play ball. Also, just a quick note for ball. I know you see those ALLs, but this actually can have a dark L. When you see AL together, a lot of times the L is not actually pronounced. It usually just makes like an aw sound. Aw, like in law or saw. You're raising that back of your tongue and you're lowering that front of your tongue and you're opening your mouth wide. Aw, ball, ball. You may also hear some native speakers that instead of pronouncing it as an aw sound, they actually just pronounce it as an ah sound. So like ba, instead of ball, more ba. There's this movement called the Great Midwestern Vowel Shift, where there's lots of people that don't distinguish between an aw sound and an ah sound. For instance, to give you an example, my wife often doesn't pronounce an aw sound. She usually pronounces things with an ah. Okay, so that is something that you will hear native speakers not always pronounce the aw sound. Our next one, call the shots. Call the shots. So again, idiomatic phrase uses a verb. So for instance, you could say that man with the megaphone, that man on the right, calls the shots. He calls the shots. That means like he's the boss. He makes the decisions. The shots are like the decisions. He calls the shots. He makes the decisions. The other person, that smaller person, has to listen to him. Okay, so if you have a boss, your boss most likely calls the shots at work. Also, this is another great example. So we have that aw sound again with call. And then shots is actually going to have the ah sound. Sha, ah. Notice my mouth is super wide. When you say the ah sound, one way to check yourself to make sure you're pronouncing it correctly is to look at yourself in the mirror. See if you can look into your throat. So when you say ah, you should be able to see back into your throat because the back of your tongue is down and the front of your tongue is down and your mouth is wide. Sha, shots, shots. Call the shots. Call the shots. Next one, on the same page. On the same page. On the same page. page is actually going to get your stress, so it's not on the same page. Usually it's going to be on the same page. Okay. Notice that page is also ending on that j sound. So you want to make sure your throat's vibrating. What tends to happen with students is that they release to make it a voiceless sound. So it sounds like page, page, but it's more page, page, making sure there's a little vibration in your throat. Okay. To be on the same page, so you'll usually see this paired with the verb to be on the same page. And that means that you and another person think alike, or you're in agreement on something. Okay. So let's say, for instance, you're working on a project at work. Your boss is worried that you're confused about the instructions. So maybe your boss will call you to just be like, hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. You want to make sure that you do step 1, 2, and 3, and just to make sure that there's no confusion. Okay. So like a lot of times it's used a lot in those types of situations. Like, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. I want to make sure we're on the same page. I want to make sure that we both understand what we need to do. Next one, in a nutshell. In a nutshell. Just really quick for the word nut. So this is again your schwa sound, like nut. So your mouth does not need to be very tense. You can raise that front middle of your tongue, back of your tongue down, and again relax your lips. N. This is a very relaxed sound. Okay, notice I don't really have a big expression on my face. Just nut. Also, again, with those L's at the end of the word, you can use the dark L sound. You don't need to say shell. You don't need that L. You just say shell. Using a dark L, just kind of raising your tongue a little bit. Shell. In a nutshell means like to give a quick summary. So for instance, there's a ton of papers here. We can see statements of assets, liabilities, of operations, tons of financial documents here. If your boss is looking for quick information, your boss wants to know what these things say in 1 minute. Maybe your boss is like, I don't have time to read all these documents. Just tell me what they say in a nutshell. It's like, give me a summary. What's the general idea that these things are all saying? That's what's kind of happening here with in a nutshell. It's like, give a summary of something. A lot of times this is used at like the start of a sentence. So like you can say, in a nutshell, the papers suggest that the business is doing well. Or like, in a nutshell, for instance, maybe you're describing a movie to a friend. Your movie's like, oh, what happened in the movie? You say, well, in a nutshell, the main character falls in love in something else like that. Okay, so again, it's just giving a quick summary. A slippery slope. This is a type of logical fallacy. You want to really watch out for these in writing. So the way a slippery slope works is that you say one thing leads to another thing, which then causes another thing. So it's kind of like this chain reaction. Like one thing causes another thing, which causes another thing, which causes another thing. Okay. And the slippery slope is when the first situation is not true, but then the second situation then can't be true, and the third situation can't be true. You see this a lot with like politicians. Politicians will start off by saying, oh, because people are poorer, the education they receive is worse. Okay, that can be a slippery slope statement. Just because someone is poor doesn't necessarily mean that their education is worse off. Okay, so that would be an example of a slippery slope, something to be mindful of making. Okay. For instance, here they're saying pride leads to confidence, which leads to security, which leads to insecurity. Okay, but while there may be some general things that you can apply to this, or that may be true about this whole cycle may not be true for everybody. Okay, so it would be a slippery slope to say, for instance, that pride can actually lead to insecurity, or that pride always leads to insecurity. That would be a slippery slope. Okay, a lot of times, if you're referring to it as a logical fallacy, you hear an ad from a politician, or you hear something in the news, you could say, oh, that's a slippery slope. Like, that's a slippery slope. Okay. For pronunciation, just a quick note, slippery, you want to be careful with this because it has a mix of the short I at the first syllable, slip, and then it has that long I, E, slippery, slippery, slippery slope, slippery slope. So you just want to be mindful of that. Turn the corner. When something turns the corner, look at this picture really quick and just try to identify, where do they turn the corner? So imagine that this is like, we're looking at this a stock performance or something in business. Where does this company turn the corner? Well, I would say right around here. Okay, the last pin, the last red dot on the right. Okay, you can see it starts off kind of going up, then it goes down, then it goes up, then it goes down again, and then it shoots up. It goes up really high. So it turns the corner right before it shoots up. Okay, so to turn the corner means like to change or to have a drastic change. Like something happens and then suddenly everything goes in a different direction. Okay, usually positive. Usually it's used in more positive situations, like the company really turned a corner. You know, at first they didn't sell that much in the first quarter of the year, but then in the second half of the year, they really started selling a lot of products. I guess you could say they really turned the corner. For turn, you want to make sure that N sound is clear. Okay, turn, turn. Also make sure you're holding that R sound long enough. Turn. Remember, in American English, you're going to be pronouncing your R sounds. It's like turn. Same thing with corner, corner. You want to make sure it's not corner, it's corner, or. Sometimes that combination could be a little bit tricky with students. So make sure that the O sound is held long enough before the R. Core, corner. Turn the corner. Stress, corner. On a roll. Roll. In case you're not sure what these things are here, these are called dice. Okay, one die, multiple dice. Dice are often used in gambling and things like that. So if you imagine gambling, let's say you go to a casino and you play a game and you win one game. Then you play again and you win again. Then you play 2 more times, 3 more times, 4 more times, and you just keep winning. You know, people may say that, oh, you're on a roll. That means like you keep having successes, like one thing after another. Lots of consecutive successes. You're on a roll. So a lot of times you'll see this pair with the verb to be on a roll, to be on a roll. And again, roll, you can see, again, those double L's at the end. So again, another dark L situation, roll. You don't need to say roll, it's just roll, roll. Under fire means like to be attacked. So for instance, you can see that he, the male on the left, has his finger pointed at the other person. So like you could say that she is under fire. He is attacking her. You could say she is under fire. It means like to be attacked, to be under fire. So typically it's like a passive sort of construction, to be under fire. Under fire. Fire is also kind of a tricky word because when you pronounce it, it almost is 2 syllables. It's going to break into 2 parts. Fire, 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 fire. Under fire, under fire. Stress, fire. To be under fire. Okay. So guys, those were all of the sounds that we had for, all the sounds, these pronunciation stuff, right? These were all of the idioms that were had. Again, these are the 16 most common ones in English. Most of these you can use in both writing and spoken situations. So I definitely would say try to include them, incorporate them into your speech. And if you have more questions about them, feel free to post them in the comments. I'll be happy to respond. Again, check out our Patreon page, check out our Telegram group. Also, we have a Native U workshop coming up on Saturday. If you're interested in that, please let me know. I'll reply to you in the comments. We're looking at the A sound, the sound. If you want to join our pronunciation group for daily feedback, again, check out our Patreon page. I'll be posting a link to that in the comments. Thank you guys so much for your time. I always appreciate it. I hope you have a good day, have a good night, a good afternoon. I'll see you in a future video. Take care.